Good morning, and it's another beautiful day on planet Earth and another day of Dose of Did You Know, where intriguing, inspiring, unique individuals come to talk love and life and how it has brought them all the way to where they are today. I am your host, Danny Rocco, and with me is the beautiful Pat from just down the road from where I am, which is super fun.
It sure is. You're just across the state. You're like over my right shoulder.
Yeah, I love it. And we got introduced from someone from this area, but now is in Tennessee. I swear, Mr. Andrew, he's I got to give him a little shout out because I love him so much. But the world just gets smaller and smaller as I get older and older.
Agreed. I get it. Not that you and I are getting older and older, Danny. Not at all.
No, I mean, we've definitely capped off in our 20s, but, you know, maturity-wise, it's definitely getting... Just kidding. And you know, I was reading about, because I read about love and relationships, and that's my jam and everything. And did you know that when you are stressed or upset, if you just hug your partner or someone that you have, like, you know, complete trust and faith in, your stress level like goes down? It's like scientifically proven.
So that is really awesome. I think my husband, Mike, is watching, so he'll be happy to know we're going to be hugging more.
Yes, right? So I think that's what you have to do. Just like hug your dog, hug your partner, hug your friend. Like if we all just go around hugging people, we will be like, oh, this is amazing.
And it's actually quite an analogy for life, right? If we actually emotionally hug people that we're not near, think about how much better the world would be.
I like that. I like that because that goes into like the ripple effect I'm always talking about. You never know the ripple effect, even just like your thoughts and your energy kind of thing. So, yep, totally digging. But before we continue on talking, tell the world a little bit about who Pat is.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Danny. This is really exciting, and I love your energy. And my goal today is to not talk too fast because I'm getting so excited listening to you and our little preamble we had. So I'm Pat Hubbell, and I'm one of the co-founders of Canderful. My other co-founder is Pete Sukitz, former U.S. Army captain. And so a little bit about me. So I kind of call myself a recovering engineer and management consultant. I got an engineering degree back in the 70s/early 80s, long before it was that common for women to do so. Did a number of years working in engineering, and then went back, got my MBA from MIT Sloan, and had a great career post-Sloan in both management consulting, motherhood, and additional management consulting and career advising. What's really funny is there were a lot of ups and downs to that career. We don't see it on LinkedIn. I think when we look at our friends, it looks like everybody's career is amazing. What we don't see is all the other things going on in the background, and mine certainly was up and down. And everything ended up culminating in the creation of Canderful, or the passion for Canderful with Pete Sukitz, because I wanted to be able to share with people the things I learned along the way to improve your opportunity to get a job that you like, maybe love. That's great if you can find one you love, but maybe like, and how to have self-esteem and confidence and resilience through the ups and downs of that. And Canderful really is focused on job interview prep for transitioning military spouses, and veterans, so that they can get the feel of a job interview, even though they may never have had one. They could be 20 years into their career, never had a job interview, and now transitioning out, struggling. And that can be like, the job search is not for the faint of heart. I know it looks great on LinkedIn, but it really is not for the faint of heart. And so we're here to help give job interview prep and practice, and I can go into more detail, but I'll probably get ahead of myself, Danny. So I'll stop there.
Oh, you know, when I'm listening to you and I see like this practical, you used your downs into kind of, that's how I saw it, like the struggles, the stuff nobody wants to talk about, but it has brought you into where you are right now. And gosh, how many times emotionally, right? I always say, one of my biggest things right now, I don't always say this because this is new, so that was a lie coming out of my mouth. First off, I'm already lying to you. It's one thing is I really want to embrace my pain. And when people think pain, it's like, tragedy, but anything that's not bringing me love, right? So if it's just an uncomfortable feeling, if it's nervousness, whatever that is, that's my like very big, broad example or definition of pain, is really to like enjoy it, because I know from that, if I allow myself to learn, I am going to like, my eyes will be open into something bigger and better that I didn't even know exists. And everything that you're talking about just like was like, ooh, maybe I needed to hear that. Like, yes, keep forging on that, that front that you're trying to, make it master. I feel like if I master it, then it's just normal. But yeah, I feel like that's what you're doing with this whole like job piece. Really.
Well, I think if you don't have the low moments, the painful moments, or if you try to fight them, and I certainly did plenty of that. So I act like I didn't fight them, or I fought them. If you don't have them, the learning that will come from them will be missed, right? So one of the nice things about being an entrepreneur now, working on a startup, is there's a term called fast failure. So I think we're often taught to try not to fail, right? To get that A, to study for the test, to do really well, which you should. Everybody should do that. But when you don't do well, stepping back and thinking, what happened there? What do I own? What don't I own? Right? So what do I own? What don't I own? What do I need to fix about how I did it? What do I need to not take on because there's nothing I can do to control it? I think those learnings are equally as important as the successes. Matter of fact, probably way more important than the successes. Mm-hmm. So I think you need to have you need to start accepting there's going to be down times, as long as you're learning from them, not just accepting them and rolling over with them.
Right. Because there's always, and does that translate? Because like you said, you work specifically with the military community. So all the ins and outs and the relationships kinds of doing that. Does it help refine your purpose? Because that's one of the biggest things. We were just even talking about my son earlier about, so he's not an infantry Marine actively anymore. What is that? What is he? What is he trying to do? And in that place. So I kind of feel like by you helping them translate the skills, because I can look at Jacob and be like, what you have done and what you have learned, and you can't replace that. That is so important. But so I'm kind of getting away with myself here, but does it kind of help find their purpose, even though you're doing this resume and getting them into this job search, for them to give like a little inside look at what you have done in your past has definitely made, and you should bring, it just looks different.
Absolutely. So I think the hard part is, well, there's two things. When you're doing something in the past and it's not going to go into the future directly, you need to look back in the past and you need to think about, what did I do that's valuable for the future? And for some people that's enough self-examination, but for most people it's not, because you don't know what the future is about, right? So you have to get information about this unknown thing called the future, so you can say, oh yeah, I did do that in the past. And even maybe some permission. We talked about permission. Even some permission, an encouragement that yes, that thing from the past is related to your future, and that's hard to do. So one of the things I talk about, it's very related to what we do with the job interview prep. But we talk about what are called informational interviews. They're not really interviews. Informational phone calls, informational meetings, where you just get on the phone with people who, in case of a veteran, who have transitioned out before you, and ask them lots of questions and listen. Just listen to their stories, which may or may not be related to your story, but without talking to the person you won't know. So just a lot of listening, a lot of questioning. And as you hear their stories and ask the right questions, you might say, oh, I could do that, or I could do part of that, or I might be able to do that, right? And that will start informing your potential for the future. So understanding, so if you're in the military right now, or a military spouse, or you're a veteran who hasn't quite figured out the transition yet, getting to know and talking to a ton of people about what they are now doing will help inform what you could do based on your past experiences. Now, this is not just for military. I have a couple of young people young people compared to me, people who I have a scientist who's finished her PhD, isn't sure what to do. Another young woman who went through a series of layoffs, economic layoffs. And I worked with them similarly to say, you have done a lot, but you need to figure out what's out there. And I'll put a plug in for one of my favorite books. It's called The 2-Hour Job Search by Steve Dalton, who's a career advisor at Duke's Fuqua School of Business. He teaches in that book how to do informational interviewing, which helps people ask the questions to get those answers. Long answer, but you got to kind of explore to figure out what your past will bring you to for your future.
Well, especially if you are if you learn visually or audible, right? Like if listening, or I don't even know if I said that right. Like I'm listening to that come out of my mouth. I'm like, I don't think I appropriately said that ever.
Yeah, audio learners, it's
audio
great.
and visual. I feel like when you have these conversations, you're like, oh, I never thought of that, you know, as opposed to just looking at the yellow pages, or what do they even have now? Probably some website or something.
Reading job descriptions, which will put you to sleep pretty darn fast. So yeah.
I will read those. Like when I left my business and was like, oh, what am I going to do now? You know, I did the same thing for 24 years. I could do it in my sleep. It was easy. I would go on and look, and I'm like, first of all, I don't even know what they're talking about, because they're like, the words they use, the verbiage is not what it was 24 years ago. So I'm like, what in the hell is that all about? And then I'd ask somebody, and they'd be like, oh, that's what you did, Danielle. And I was like, oh, that's what they call it?
New terms. That's right. Absolutely.
But learning through other people, I think is huge.
Absolutely. And to your point, I'm a kinesthetic learner. I kind of need to write things down and think about them and hear them multiple ways. So the first person I speak with, it may not even resonate with me. And the seventh person I speak with, it might be like, oh, that's what the first person meant, but I was able to hear it better. So it requires a lot of these conversations to be able to figure out what to do next. And by the way, every time you meet someone new, every time you have a new conversation, there's another person in your network. And by the way, when you ask someone about themselves and let them talk to you, you become endeared to them, because people like to talk about themselves. So it's a great way to build your network. It is the way to build your network.
Yeah. So how did you go from that to this? Like
Sure. So I'll try to do the fast timeline. So again, I was an engineer, then I went and got my MBA, and then I worked in management consulting. So it was all the, even though there was a career transition there, it still was all very predictable.
Yeah.
I stayed home with my daughter. And when she was 6th grade, I was told that the role I was playing either was ending. So either I would go back on the road, or the job was going to go away. So I chose, knowing she was in 6th grade and entering her teen years, I chose to stay home, which was a little hard to take at the time. I started a small business helping students prepare for their MBA applications, and ended up, long story, but ended up helping a lot of veterans at that point and with it, and found out that I really enjoyed working with them. And I can really go into detail. Some of it's self-serving, like they wouldn't fight me if I give them advice. They're like, oh, let me check that out, as opposed to having battle with me. So I love working with them, because they were fun to work with, and cooperative. So I worked with a lot of veterans. I ended up, my daughter was going to BC, and the bills were pretty steep. And I ended up taking a job at Cornell's MBA program, advising students on how to prepare for their roles in management consulting and career services, which is where I learned about the book, The 2-Hour Job Search. And in that role, I met this young man named Pete Sukitz, who was transitioning out of the military, getting his MBA. Unbelievable, introverted guy, unbelievable, sweet, hardworking, and ready for the next thing. Loved working with him. He seemed to do a good job. May have taken a wee bit more time than some of his non-military classmates, but by that time I knew that was a thing, right? I knew there was a little bit more that they had to prepare for. So in my mind, he did fine. So fast forward a few years later, I was back working in management consulting here in the Boston area for a company called Keystone Strategy. And Pete called me, he was out working already. And he's like, all the prep you did, all those mock interviews, I left Pete out. I worked with IT at Cornell's MBA program to automate matching alumni with students for mock interviews, because it was very, very powerful. I checked into data, and I found out that students who participated in mock interviews were twice as likely to land their job, and landed that job 6 times faster. So
wow,
I worked to automate it, right? The engineer, you can't get rid of the engineer in you. So then I left, had this conversation with Pete, and we're like, let's bring something to the veteran community that we we're able to do in an MBA community. And mock interviews are a great way to kind of build that, that stepping stone. And so with double-sided platform technology, meaning, bringing two groups together, Uber, I've got a car, you need a ride. So I've got a group of interviewers, you need an interview practice, we'll bring you guys together. We can make an impact out of transitioning military and military spouses. And so that was the beginning of Canderful, which we started, we met the market in 2018, helped 185 people then, 235 in 2019, 701 last year. I think it's conservative to say we'll help over 1,000 this year.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying really hard to improve our technology. We've outgrown it. We have a wonderful technology partner who got us to this point with our technology, but we're kind of bigger than that. We're nonprofit, so we're trying to raise funds, which I think I'm accidentally taking us to the next part of the conversation.
No, keep going, because
we formed a board 2 years ago. I have a wonderful board of 8 people, myself and Pete, and a person I met at Mass Challenge Boston, an accelerator we went through, a bunch of my classmates from MIT Sloan, and a couple other people who, a Canderful alum who's a top instructor, and he wrote this great book over my shoulder. All really working to support Canderful, and we're trying to figure out how to accelerate fundraising. We're small, trying to, get the attention of large corporations where they might want veterans has been our goal. We're working on that. But in the meantime, as we develop, that's a very slow process. As we develop that, we need funds for improving our technology. So one of my board members is an ultra marathoner. He raised $35,000 for us to get our first steps into technology, and did a great job. His name is Charlie Tillett. And he said to me, that was about 1.5 years ago he did that. He said to me last fall, so why don't you, he said, he knew I was running 5K. So, that, Danny, that's 3.1 miles.
Yeah.
Right?
That's like a marathon to me, by the way.
I know, but that's tiny. And I hated it. Right. And he said, why don't you run a half marathon and raise money for Canderful? I'm like, no. I'm 62 years older than 61. I'm not going to try to run 13.1 or whatever it is. I'm just not going to try to do it. I will break. I will break and not recover. And he's like, let's start thinking about how to train for this. So we set a date. Notice I never said yes here, but apparently, so we set a date for.
He said yes for you, and he just pulled you along. What a salesman!
Yes, Charlie's amazing. So Patriots Day, which is a big deal up here in the Northeast, and in particular in Massachusetts, which is about 50 feet to my left. So Patriots Day is April 19th, and I am running half marathon distance. Notice I'm saying distance. I am not running a race. And, I cannot believe I'm doing this at 62 years old. And it is a fundraiser. And one of my other board members said, so if you run this half marathon and if you raise $25,000, I'll match it. And it's like, right? So imagine, right? So
I would, you have to say yes. You better start training, because that is an amazing gift, but man, I would be crying inside every day.
Well, that's kind of how I feel. I'm really excited. Then, as I head out on my training runs, it's like, I can't do this. Right. So, but so I have $50,000 on the line here, and another 2 weeks to raise it, or a little bit beyond that, maybe. I think we hit about 11,500 this morning, just short of that. It's an estimate. We're still waiting for some checks to come in. So I got a long way to go. But I'm going to run it on April 19th, assuming it's not a downpour. We will hold that date. And what's really awesome is one of my other classmates is going to run me in for the last 5 miles. And we have this accountant. It's the first person we've contracted to. We try to do everything ourselves. This amazing accountant, Stetson, who's going to run me the whole time to make sure I don't fall over and die along the way. So Canderful's community is running along with me, and I hopefully still standing 2 weeks from now.
You will definitely still be standing, because you have some gumption. You have some fire. Even though you have this presence about you. It's a little calming for me. It's very calming. I shouldn't say that. It's just this very calming thing. But you have some fire up in there to be like, yes, because many of people have been like, No, that's great. It's a wonderful idea, and very thank you for matching it, you know, if this happens, but I am not going to push myself out of this comfort zone that I've lived in for 61 years to do this. So I love that about you. That is that Spitfire.
Well, I have to be honest, there's a whole bunch of things at play here. First of all, we talked briefly about anxiety before we actually launched this video. And I find, as much as I'm not a lover of running, that running levels me out, helps me sleep, and helps me deal with what I think is probably fairly normal anxiety. I think we talk about anxiety as if it's an illness. I think we all deal with anxiety, especially during COVID. Who knows if I have an excess amount or not, but it helps me deal with it. Yeah. So there's that. My dad and mom, when we were teenagers, late teenagers, early 20s, my dad and mom started running together, and they ended up doing marathons and marathons. And my mom, who is still with us, and so my dad was a World War II fighter pilot, so he was a veteran. He passed away from ALS. My mom, who is still with us at 93 years old, she held a national record. So imagine a homemaker from the 50s, 60s, and 70s starting running in her 50s and held a national record for a woman of whatever it was, 52 years old or something, in a half marathon. So, you know, yeah. So, you know, all I have to do is call her up and say, I ran 10 miles today. And she's like, she might be unhappy about life, but she's like hooting and hollering on the other side. You did not. That's great. So I do have, you know, people who set an example for me, which also is pressure, right? You know,
because you definitely, there's no going back. It will happen on the 19th.
Oh yeah.
Rain or shine or snow, because you never know. We're in New Hampshire, so it could
very well be snow. Yeah, it could very well be snow.
You will be doing it. I was thinking of you because I have this vision of living in warm weather and being able to walk everywhere and things like that. And I'm like, well, you know, you should probably start doing that. You can do that in the town you live in. So I like went for my run, and I'm like, it was like probably 10 minutes, and I was dying. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I not know how Pat did this, because my throat hurt. I felt like I was going to throw up. I'm like, yeah, on like 10, maybe 12 minutes running.
Okay, so I have a lot of people that support me. So back when I was working in Cornell and Ithaca, my daughter, who was at BC at the time, Boston College, ran a half marathon. I know it sounds like I'm surrounded by marathoners, but you know, this is it. You've heard all of them now. She's very, very much an athlete. And I remember talking to her afterwards, like, I'd like to do that. And I wasn't doing anything. I was just like, and she said, well, why don't you run a mile, Mom? I'm like, I don't think I can. And she challenged me to run a 12-minute mile, because you go out and you run an 8-minute mile and you die. And that's what you do, because otherwise it's not running. And so I'm like, well, that's stupid. Why would I want to do that? She's like, because that way you can do a mile. And I think in the end, I did a quarter mile, 12-minute mile for a quarter mile, then walk quarter mile. And so on for 1 mile. And I was like, oh, I accomplished it. And that was in, I want to say 2014 or 15. That's where it all began. And it was flat. It was very flat, no hills, unlike where you and I live now.
Yeah.
And, that's where it began. So you can start. You just got to start right. And when I say I'm going to run this distance, trust me, a lot of people would not call my speed running. But I'm running.
Yeah, I think you and I have that in common also. I use the word running very loosely when I talked about what I did this morning. The old lady in the walker is passing me, you know, I'm running, I swear. I got this. Before, because it's coming, our show is actually over, but I have to ask you this question. When you're doing these mock interviews, does it actually help the veteran or the spouse be able to talk to someone that is non-military, like have a better understanding of how that communication happens or should happen?
Yeah, so we have 75 coaches on our platform, all from all different walks of life. Some are veterans, not all of them. I would say 2/3 at least, if not 3/4, are non-military. And those who are military are instructed to take off their military hat when they do their practice with us, with the veterans. So yes, they have to learn to not use any military terminology. You know, when you hear an E5 or an MOS of this, it's over. And we challenge them on it, right? Which is something you won't see in a real interview. People might not challenge you. It might just go right over their head, and then information isn't used. So we call them out. We say, don't expect to be called out in a real interview, but realize you may have missed an opportunity. And we will help them think through how to say that in non-military terms. Absolutely. And it's a forcing function, right? So if you come in and hear yourself using military terminology, you will start to change. And if you're not hearing yourself use it, we will point out that you're using it. Surprisingly, I think because we're a forcing function, 80% of the people coming through are actually getting good at not using it. But you know, if you know you have an interview with Canterville tomorrow, you are likely thinking about what you're going to say in the interview. So
Right.
it pushes you to think in advance of a Canterville interview, which is better than pushing you to think about it the day before your real interview, right? So, and the thing is, I tell people, you can come crash and burn with us. We're going to lift you up. We're going to give you real feedback. It's going to be a little tough love, but we'll lift you up and nothing has happened, right? You crash and burn with us, nothing bad has happened, right? Yeah. We'll put you on for another interview and it will get better and better. And I think most people find that they don't crash and burn. They get a lot of good advice along the way. We have we keep data because that's what you do nowadays. You keep data, which is important. We have a net promoter score of 98. So a net promoter score means how likely are you going to tell your friends to use this service? 75 is considered world-class and very high, and ours is 98. I think that speaks to the fact that we're working really hard to really help people, and people are hungry for this service. Yeah. We also did a quick calculation, not a quick calculation, but an analysis last year from December 2019 through August 2020. And we kind of tracked people who were going after a certain company, a large name e-commerce company. And if they landed a phone screen and came through Canterville, 78% landed a job and got an offer with that company, which we believe, we don't have data to compare it to. We believe it's very high. So we know we're making a difference. And you know what? Even if it's that confidence is lifted by coming through Canterville, like let's say it's 75% confidence and 25% skill improvement. If you've got more confidence, you're going to present yourself better in an interview. So it's another piece that comes from coming through our process.
Absolutely. And I feel you are changing the way businesses feel about veterans too, because there's that huge disconnect where they say they want a veteran, but they don't relate and they have all of these preconceptions about them and myths and all of that jazz. So when you are presenting veterans, helping them be able to communicate more, you're actually changing all of these companies' mindsets along the way, which is huge. So again, your ripple effect is not just in that little nucleus that you're working with. It's really changing what I believe is a part. We have to educate these CEOs and these businesses and managers and things like that about what a veteran actually looks like.
So it goes, you're so correct. But at the same time, so you're so correct. Same time, I don't want any veteran or military spouse to hear that and say, well, they need to learn, so I don't have to translate.
No.
Right.
You gotta own your own crap. You gotta own your own crap.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I don't mean to correct you because you had it right. And at the same time, we are in communication with about 4 different companies, 3 of which are their ERGs, trying to, which is a Veterans Employee Resource Group, trying to get these companies. You know, there's snow going by my window right now, Danny. It's just
my gosh. Oh my gosh. I don't ever want to hear that.
Oh, and I don't know if people know, we're in New Hampshire. So, veterans ERGs, we hear from them how they are doing interviews with veterans who want to come to their companies, but they're not translating their military skills. Even the veterans who are employed by these companies don't know how to help them, right? So we're trying to partner with these companies to A, get the word out, to B, get these companies to say, look, if we could improve our yields by hiring through Canterville, we can actually make it cheaper for us to put all this effort into veteran hiring. We can get our D&I stats up, and we are helping a nonprofit actually, support their mission. So we're trying to find companies who want to work with us. We are in communications with about 4 doing that. I don't dare bring up the names because I don't want to, we have to be careful with that, but about 4 companies that like this idea.
I love it. It is. And I'm glad you clarified that, because people that do know me know, like, there are no excuses in life. It doesn't matter what happens, what is presented. It is not an excuse for bad behavior to push your struggle onto someone else. So I'm super glad you clarified that, because it just like bonus, what else?
Right. And you meant the right thing, but I just wanted to underscore it. So.
Love it. together. It's all about working together.
Absolutely.
Oh, Pat, thank you so much for coming on, sharing what you're doing. I am going to put the link in there so I can support you along your massive journey of the massive journey of having a nonprofit and being able to, it takes money to run a nonprofit.
It does.
Just money doesn't fall out of the air for you to be able to do what you do. So for one, owning that, doing it, even though it is very challenging and probably a little harder than having just a traditional business, and then putting your money where your mouth is, or your feet, I should say, and doing this great fundraiser. So I'm super excited to like follow that and see how that goes for you. But before I let you go, I ask you to answer this last question I have for you with whatever comes to your heart first. You don't even need to explain it, but in this moment right now, Pat, what does love mean to you?
I'm trying to think how to put it into words, and I'm gonna copy you. That ripple effect point is really good. I think we're at a point in time, we're at a tipping point in time where we're letting the news and a lot of TV affect how we are acting as individuals. It used to be we were involved in our communities and we would help each other out. You know, somebody's house burned down, people in that church and that community would help them out. We've kind of moved away, and COVID has moved us away faster. We've forgotten one-on-one connection, right? So one of the things I love and I talk to our coaches about is we're doing one-on-one interview prep, which means we're relating to that person for an hour, personally from our hearts to help them out. So what love means to me is when people are willing to step out of their comfort zone and help someone, whether you're bringing a muffin to the homeless person on the corner because you don't want to give them money maybe, but bring them a muffin instead, or you're becoming a Canderful coach, or you're ignoring the news and realizing that if you're a liberal, you can still love a Republican and vice versa. That's what love means to me. It's going outside your comfort zone and making a personal connection and personal impact.
I love that. I have never heard that example of what love is. So thank you for that. I always feel like you said self-serving. I always feel like that question is a little self-serving for me because I'm fascinated about love and I want to sit and I want to think on what other people feel about love and try to implement into that into my life. So thank you for that.
You're already doing it, Danny. You're already doing it. And I love your ripple effect. Thank you so much for having me on and for having Canderful on. I will send you the link to the fundraiser.
Yes.
And I thank you to all the listeners and for Andrew for making the connection between you and me, and John for doing that as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I will see you later. Everybody else out there, remember, as always, love hard, love pure, and love proactive. Until next time. Bye-bye.